Why were icy fish named so? How does Alaska wood frog survive frost? What strange creature was discovered near Antarctica? I'll tell you about this. In this episode, you'll learn about the most unusual creatures living in the most severe climatic conditions. And we'll start with one curious story that went viral on the internet pretty quickly. In 2016, near Antarctica, people saw a squid of unprecedented size. Google Earth resources helped make the discovery. According to rumors, the monster was so large that it was visible even from space. Supposedly, its length was from 200 to 400 feet, along with tentacles, which sounds just crazy. If this creature's really alive, then most likely it's not another squid known to humans, but a real kraken hiding in the depths of the ocean. According to legends, in the old days, these monsters attacked sailing ships, sending them to the bottom with their massive tentacles. And I don't even know what people should do with this discovery. After all, even if they find this squid in life, it's unlikely that it can be fished out like classic mollusks. What do you think? Who could this creature found in the ocean really be? Write in the comments. Mackerel icefish. Creatures from all over the world go to great lengths to live successfully and comfortably in particular territory. The icefish, for example, has made its blood transparent. And this is not about secret magic, but the fact that these underwater inhabitants simply do not have hemoglobin and red blood cells. So the main vital fluid doesn't color anything. Thanks to this, the blood doesn't thicken at low temperatures. Yes, of course, this has its disadvantages. For example, nothing carries oxygen in the body of fish under such circumstances, and they find it more difficult to breathe. They solve this problem as follows. They allow oxygen to spread through the body without additional substances in dissolved form. This method is about 10 times slower than the classical method with the use of hemoglobin. In general, it doesn't cause any problems. Yes, the fish are a little slow, but there's nothing you can do about it. At least that's what scientists thought until recently, when it turned out that in fact, icefish have actually completely reorganized their bodies and adapted them to the icy conditions. At that rate, they run oxygen no slower than the rest of us. They run it about as fast as I drive away mosquitoes in the summertime. Leave a like if you hate them too. I wish I could be adapted to icy conditions and move to Antarctica during the heat wave because there are no mosquitoes there. They don't, do they? Well, there's nothing like that. The largest true land animals of Antarctica are considered to be mosquitoes. The main thing is not to go crazy and not to start thinking that in the cold conditions, these cracked skulls have grown to multi-meter dimensions. Not at all. In fact, they're quite small. The body length of the same females, which are larger than males, rarely exceeds 1/10 of an inch, and they do not fly and do not bite. They're just heavenly creatures, aren't they? They crawl on those rare pieces of bare soil that thaw under the rays of the sun and periodically freeze into the ice for more successful survival and dehydrate themselves by 70%. What's even more amazing is that this entire process occurs without any harm to their health. This midge reproduces almost the same way as all members of its family, by laying eggs in a moist environment. In any case, you're now probably thinking that the mosquito is very nice. It doesn't fly, it doesn't bite, it doesn't want to harm anyone. In a nutshell, Antarctica's lucky, right? Well, it's not. In fact, it's extremely dangerous to all life in that area. The thing is that this midge got to Antarctica by accident. It's believed that it was brought to the territory of this continent during one of the expeditions from Europe or Russia. It took root here and began to grow rapidly. Now there's a risk that it will devour other parasites. In their turn, they'll stop harming birds. The birds will multiply too much and start to fight for territory and excessively attack the same underwater inhabitants. In a nutshell, chaos will ensue. The equilibrium will be disturbed, and no one knows what consequences it'll lead to. That's why mosquitoes are mosquitoes in Antarctica. Disgusting and nasty creatures that are only too happy to harm others. Unique penguin. In late August 2023, zoologists from Argentina discovered a case of melanism in a Papuan penguin living in Antarctica. Usually these birds have a black and white coloration, and everything goes unchanged. The individual found by the people stood out a lot. Due to the mutation, this penguin had a spotted appearance. Fortunately, it's unlikely that it interfered with its usual life. There was no indication that the extra coloration on the front of the penguin made it more vulnerable to predators. It didn't seem to bother the other penguins in its colony. According to the scientists, the chance of encountering such a handsome penguin in the wild is about 1 in 250,000. Leave a like if you'd like to see it in the wild too. What do you think is more interesting for scientists? To meet an extremely rare penguin or pulling an unknown creature out of the water that they've never seen before? I guess no matter how cool the penguin is, the second option still wins out. So in December 2023, humans pulled some kind of four-eyed creature out of the waters of Antarctica. It was found at a depth of about 2,000 feet. As they said later, it was most likely a sea spider, a species that's not yet been studied by humans. These creatures are distinguished by their bright yellow color and large claws. Some people even compare them to boxing gloves and call the creature a boxer spider. Most likely, such wide limbs are necessary for the spider to successfully capture food because the basis of its diet is worms. Unfortunately, so far this is all that people have managed to learn on this subject. We can only hope that this species will not be extremely poisonous or dangerous to others. I'm somehow already tired of such terrible finds. And in order to get to know the next creature better, you and I will need to move to Alaska because that's where this interesting forest frog lives. And it will not be enough just to go there, we'll have to look into the ice. Scientists say this creature often literally freezes into it for the whole winter. Doesn't that seem a bit desperate to you? Curiously enough, the frog prepares for the transformation into ice in advance, starting in the summer. It gradually deposits urea in its muscles and glycogen in its liver. Then, when the air temperature drops to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, these creatures move from swamps to hilltops. During this journey, the liver converts glycogen into glucose, and the frogs have new strength and energy to migrate. And if the organism suddenly finds itself in the cold, the same glucose changes its purpose from energy source to antifreeze. Climbing higher, the Alaskan amphibian hides in the foliage and waits until the frost completely envelops it and turns it into ice. In fact, this is a very dangerous process, with the frog putting its life on the line. But not in the case of the Alaskan wood frog. The urea-glucose cocktail prevents cell freezing and nourishes the frog's body at the same time, yet it still freezes about 70% of the time. It remains a mystery to modern scientists how it manages to supply its body with oxygen and at the same time survive blood glaciation. It all seems too complicated, and you can't help but wonder, why isn't it just like everyone else? You know, it could sleep by the lakes and not do these weird warming activities. As it turns out later, it was a cunning plan by the Alaskan wood frog. Thanks to its ability after hibernation, it wakes up earlier than the others, even before the ice comes off the lakes and rivers. Together with the streams of meltwater, it rolls into temporary lakes and gets carte blanche to breed tadpoles. There's plenty of room for this process, but when everyone else wakes up, the real battle for the last convenient place will begin. Muskox. The time of really giant animals of the past fell into oblivion. We remember with incredible surprise about mammoths, say how these animals were so large, strong, and at the same time coped with low temperatures. But wait to be sad, all the most interesting things are waiting for us ahead because the same muskox is alive, safe, and healthy. By the way, it's millions of years old, and it continues to successfully fight not just against some predators, but the main boss of the Arctic, the soul-chilling frost. And if a thick fat layer in the polar circle is not much surprising, then the muskox fascinates literally everyone with the characteristics of its wool. The hair cover of the muskox consists of 2 layers. The first one is rough and stiff hair. This is necessary for protection from strong wind, snow, and even bites of various parasites. The second layer, aka quiviate, on the contrary, has very fine hair, about 7 times thinner than ours. At the same time, they're incredibly warm, about 8 times more efficient than sheep's wool. Quiviate garments cost insane amounts of money, but protect against cold and wind even better than advanced synthetic materials. And the muskoxen, as you can imagine, have it all coming in a package from Mother Nature. It seems to me that the muskox doesn't even realize how valuable material he has, because his whole head and mind are filled with the search for food. It's very difficult to feed a giant body with dry grass and lichen in the far north. The same vegetation is only visible for 2 months out of 12. The rest of the time, the muskox has to dig, and dig again. In order not to lose their heads from such a boring process, these animals gather in herds, usually of 20 individuals, and do this together. Okay, we've talked about the giant, so it's time to talk about the cute Arctic ground squirrel. But don't worry, it definitely has something to surprise you with. Let's start with the fact that in winter, the body temperature of this creature can fall to 26 degrees Fahrenheit. From the scientific point of view, it's unrealistic to survive in such conditions. But the ground squirrel somehow manages to do this. In his Arctic, the rodent spends in total arrest for more than 6 months a year. It sounds crazy, whereas this animal finds such winter sleep easy, simple, and understandable. Yes, such a thing as winter sleep really exists. It's more powerful than classic rest, but it's still pretty easy to come out of this state. Except that squirrels apparently haven't heard of it at all. They're completely disconnected from reality during the duration of their sleep. During this process, their breathing practically stops. Their heart beats only once a minute, their body becomes completely frozen, and their body temperature drops not just to the level of the ambient temperature, but even below it and goes into the minus. What do you think? Is this the most amazing thing about the Arctic ground squirrel? Well, it's not. Personally, I was much more amazed by the fact that the blood of the creature remains liquid. And none of the scientists have any idea how this happens. The fact is that these squirrels do not use any of the known ways to resist freezing. They don't have any anti-freezing substances. Against this background, scientists even began to think that there's nothing to freeze there. It's assumed that these animals have learned to remove the so-called nuclei of crystallization. Without them, the foundation where ice can form is lost. However, this theory is yet to be fully proven. What do you think? How do Arctic squirrels manage to do this? How many dreams do they have time to watch? Write in the comments. Gyrfalcon. This is the name of the bird from the order Falconiformes we're about to talk about. It's one of the most desperate inhabitants of the far north that I've ever met. But let's get to the point. First of all, the gyrfalcon is the largest of all falcons. Sounds promising, doesn't it? Except that in reality, the feathered one is not so frightening in terms of its size. Its wingspan reaches 4.5 feet, with a total length of 2 feet. The female is larger than the male and can weigh about 4.5 pounds. Everything's all right with dimensions, but most of all, I like the shape of the gyrfalcon. It looks very confident and solid. Snow white, brown, or gray coloring, depending on the case, won't let you take your eyes off it. Streamlined body, small, neat head, and slightly curved beak. It feels as if the top engineers working on its design. This compact raptor can safely call the Arctic its home, and absolutely all of it. The gyrfalcon's habitat goes in an even circle across all the lands of the northern latitudes. And all because this falcon is a real master of flight, very fast and can fly several thousand miles at a time. Of course, the bird needs to be extremely well prepared physically for such marathons and have the appropriate motivation. And do you know what it is in this case? Well, of course, hunger. In the Arctic lands, food is not very good in summer. With the onset of winter, you have to look for it all over the tundra. Skillful hunter tracks his enemies and doesn't give them a chance to escape. Because of its keen eyesight, no one can hide, even in the snow. Narwhal. Another name of our next guest is a sea unicorn. I think it doesn't require much explanation. These underwater inhabitants are distinguished from their rather modest size. A large adult male grows only to 15 feet in length and gains a maximum of 3 tons. Yes, these are modest dimensions because the narwhal belongs to the infraorder of cetaceans. And although its size does not stand out on the general background, this creature has something it became known for literally all over the world. Of course, this is its horn. What's most interesting, none of the scientists know the real reason why these whales need it. The only thing that researchers have agreed on is that it's very long tusk growing out of its upper jaw. The tusk grows up to 10 feet long and can weigh 22 pounds. It's not very comfortable to carry, but in theory it can pierce someone or clear the way. It may also have some fine fabrics on it to aid in echolocation. We can speculate for a long time, however, I suggest that we just wait until the scientists do a couple or 3 dozen more studies and give us a definite answer. That's about it. Write in the comments what creatures surprised you most of all. Leave a like and subscribe to the channel.